So now what?
When I first thought about playing Freddie Mercury, we all see him as this icon, this treasure, this deity. I mean, someone who almost levitates off the ground. He shows up on stage with a cape and a crown. He might as well be a superhero. So I thought behind there must be the Clark Kent, right? And I thought, okay, my only way in, because if I start out trying to fly, it's never going to happen. Here's a guy named Farouk Bulsara, who's questioning his sexual identity. There's a very confused kid in there, a very complicated kid. And inside of him is somewhat of a tempest, something that's just volatile. It's about to explode.
Freddie is sort of like the ultimate outsider, the ultimate underdog. You know, he grew up as a minority in his country, as an immigrant, and as gay. In the 1970s and 80s. So it wasn't the easiest route to being an international rock star, but he was that. And he was so fearless, and he was never going to let anything stop him, and he was never going to use anything as an excuse, and he was never, ever going to let himself say it's too hard or not give it everything he had. And so I think that like kind of can't quit sort of attitude is something that we wanted to make sure was a big part of the film.
This is when the operatic section comes in.
Oh, the operatic section.
They weren't always concerned about being the coolest band in the world or being loved by the critics. They just wanted to express themselves. And I think that's something that we tried to do as well. And Rami really set the tone with that on set. He never let the prospect of playing Freddie Mercury overwhelm him. He really brought a positive, celebratory attitude with him on set every day.
We are so aware of stage Freddie Mercury that this film looks more intricately at his the quieter side of his life, the more vulnerable side of him and childlike side of him. And at that side is Mary. They were the kind of stillness in the center of his very wild and colorful, dynamic, and sometimes frenzied world that was his life.
Quite frankly, she is the heart of the movie. And you would never think that the woman in Freddie Mercury's life would be the heart of the story, not the Freddie Mercury that I thought I knew. She was the love of his life, the person he says he trusted the most, his common-law wife, he refers to her as, and you know, the person to this day who only knows where his ashes are. So she is definitely going to be the heart of the movie.
Brian May was kind of my main source of information, and he was actually the person who introduced Mary and Freddie. He knew Mary previously, and so knew them as individuals before, and so then I guess could more clearly see the impact that they had on each other. And it sounds like these two very shy people saw each other with a kind of a greater clarity than so many are granted, and brought this kind of light out of each other. They were absolutely like magnets with each other. And so I think, and it appeals to the kind of quieter side of him.
There's, of course, you know, a hedonistic, illicit, gratuitous aspect of this film that you could go down, but you know, you want to hint at that so that you can really live in the joy of what this band means to so many people. When you hear Queen, I mean, inevitably, you have a smile on your face no matter what the song is. You're either moving, you're dancing, you're stomping your feet. It's probably the #1 song you hear doing karaoke. So why not celebrate the people who made that song? And those moments where you get to see the creation of a song like Bohemian Rhapsody or We Will Rock You by this band of misfits, these guys who wanted to sing and play to everyone at the back of the room. You know, the people who couldn't afford the tickets is something we wanted to exemplify in this young group of guys who really didn't fit together at all. They had no reason being together. One's an astrophysicist, one's an immigrant kid from Zanzibar.
Higher.
Can you go a bit higher?
If I go any higher, only dogs will hear me. Try. Higher. Jesus, how many more Galileos do you want?
I think people will be really surprised to find out who wrote which songs as well. Most people attribute them all to Freddie. And so it shines a light on that, and also the impact of people in his life that you wouldn't otherwise know about. Mary, for example, and his relationship with his family, and Jim Hutton as well. So I think it gives a more three-dimensional, 360 insight into why he is the way he is.
They're the only band whose every member has written a #1 single, which makes, that says it all, really. They all had something to offer. John Deacon wrote these incredible bass lines that contributed to Another One Bites the Dust. Brian is the only person, I think, who's ever written a folk song about time travel. Yeah, I think they all allowed each other their moment to shine. They were, they're very generous, and they knew that was their strength.
When he put in the teeth and the prosthetic and the mustache and all of that, it was just another world where I was just like, this is the coolest thing.
Sent shivers up the spine the first time we saw him in full costume and makeup. And the first time we saw him in full costume and makeup was that Live Aid look, which is so iconic. That's, when you think of Freddie, you probably think of that look.
When he would walk on as Freddie, there would be not a % of Rami left. It just absolutely was. And so you stop thinking about it as a transformation after a while. You are just absolutely at work with this person, Freddie.
I met choreographers early on, and I said, oh no, I'm not going to be choreographed. Nothing he did was a 5, 6, 7, 8. Everything he went out there, he didn't know what was going to happen from second to second. And you feel moments where his adrenaline is just kicking in. I needed to have that happen for me, take after take after take. So it was about just having him live organically within me. And I had the help of Polly Bennett, a movement teacher, who just helped me develop that, so that anytime, any place, I could jump into my version of Freddie.
All right!
Live Aid we had to do foot for foot, move for move, lip sync to sync. Everything that John Deacon does on the bass, you'll see Joe Mazzello do. Ben Hardy does the drums in the same way Roger Taylor does them, everything. And of course, Gwilym Lee is the perfect Brian May.
When we knew we were going to start with the Live Aid sequence, we were terrified. We thought, this is crazy. Why are we starting with this? This is nuts. But at that moment, we're like, it makes sense. It makes absolute sense. And it was also really useful to be able to start with something so specific. It was the one part of the film we were like, we need to capture this in absolute detail because it's so recognizable, that performance, that it meant if ever we got overwhelmed by the prospect of the whole story, by the prospect of, we could just refer to the video and go, right, which way is his head pointing at this moment? What's the angle of his shoulder at this moment? How is he holding himself? And just be really specific and just not get overwhelmed.
The last day we were shooting that sequence, we got to perform it from start to finish, nonstop, the entire set. And I just remember getting very emotional and just being like, what a privilege it is to be here and performing this, even if it's 500 people and then the crew and all of it. I just it was this euphoric moment. And then I had to be like, no, Joe, snap out of it. You're doing a job right now. Be a professional and make sure that you hit all your beats and you're doing the backing vocals and all of that. And so but I did have that one moment where I just completely lost myself. And it was just such a beautiful thing that it was sort of a crowning moment for me.
From the perspective of this generation, a new generation, millennials will see Queen possibly for the first time and get to know Freddie for the first time. So we wanted to be as intimate as we could with his life and showing an aspect of who this person was behind closed doors, how a young man from humble beginnings can come to be one of the greatest rock stars the world has ever known and be a part of one of the greatest rock bands the world has ever known. It's an opportunity of a lifetime, and yes, chances are it could go very, very wrong, but you can't live life without taking a few risks, and I like a challenge, I guess. This is probably the biggest one I'll ever take in my life, and fingers crossed it works.